From first-time Polish developer Strategy Forge comes Punk Wars, a quote classic 4X turn-based strategy game that pits fittingly four post-apocalyptic powers against each other: the pious steampunk, the shadowy dieselpunk, the militaristic steelpunk, and the technocratic atom punk. For those new to 4X, it's of course 4 X's, not 3, which is something else entirely. Instead, 4 X's stand for explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate. As you've probably guessed, Punk Wars, an entirely single-player experience might I add, lets you play through these 4 X's as each punk, or corporation as they're referred to in-game, via skirmishes or standalone campaigns that realize the vision each corporation has for this brave new world. With foreplay out of the way, let's put Punk Wars under the microscope and see if this punk is junk or, crunk. In my opinion, Punk Wars isn't a bad 4X game, but it is just another 4X game, doing little to differentiate itself from prior entries in the genre. Now, to be fair, Punk Wars was marketed as classic 4X, but this tried and true hexagonal-based formula has very much been tried, to the point that many, myself included, are desperate for innovation. Age of Wonders' Planetfall, for example, partially answered this plea by adding a fifth X into the mix, that X being XCOM, as Planetfall blended Civilization-style conquest with XCOM-style tactical battle. There is a degree of XCOM-like tactics to the combat in Punk Wars, so let's kick things off with gameplay. As noted, Punk Wars is a pretty straightforward 4X affair, perhaps heavier on combat than is its peers. Wastelanders, Punk Wars' barbarian derivative, hit you early and often, and enemy corporations typically aren't far behind. Really, this game is pretty hard, even on easy. Luckily, you'll have a bevy of units, almost all of which possess unlockable special abilities with which to punch back, and it's in their buffs, debuffs, and crowd control abilities wherein lies most of the game's depth. This said, Punk Wars' built-in resource caps tend to put a ceiling on just how quickly you can expand. But hey, 4X fans are used to long playtimes, right? Now, I'm no Punk Wars pro, but I haven't yet detected much nuance between corporations with regard to game flow. It's pretty much all about pumping out more troops than the next guy and then locking down your unique resource, meaning resource denial is critical here too. Speaking of resources, it's each corporation's unique fuel source that dictates most of the story elements in Punk Wars. The steam-powered steampunk, for example, rally around their messiah-like father-director figure in an effort to rid the world of dirty fuel. Dieselpunk predictably ain't about that life, and would rather run the world as a fossil fuel-fired neoliberal conglomerate of sorts. The brutish steelpunk, meanwhile, believes that nuclear weapons are a coward's way of settling disputes, while atompunk, which probably caused this whole mess by selling warheads to bad actors, believes nuclear fission is, ironically, the only way to restore humanity to its former glory. Their motivation for fighting is to secure not-so-willing test subjects for their often insane Nazi-esque experiments. So it's a fun premise, bursting with delicious sci-fi world building, and the ensuing dialogue makes clear that the devs had a fun and loose time writing it all up. This said, the story is pretty pulpy and generally falls short of delivering any novel, thought-provoking moments, so maybe temper those expectations a bit. I did appreciate the narrative-heavy events that each corporation advisor will randomly present you, as they break up the run-of-the-mill gameplay and facilitate a bit of ruler roleplay. Though the balancing here feels off, as the event trade-offs often punish you to surprising degrees, carving your supply cap in half, for example, with little heads up. We're gonna leapfrog content to unpack the game's style, of which art design gave me the most heartburn. Really, this 2 is as close to a 3 as it gets, but I ultimately could not overlook just how bad the color palette and combat animations are in Punk Wars. With regard to color, good luck playing Diesel and Steam, as their respective red and yellow hues are completely lost on the game's relentlessly brown biomes. Hey, I get it, it's post-Nukegeddon, but while narratively consistent, the environments in Punk Wars are ultimately bland and repetitive. Now, I know 4X games are known for great combat animations, but the ones in Punk Wars would have looked disjointed 10 years ago. There's no real satisfying audio-visual response when your unit attacks or is attacked, and what does register on screen lacks impact. This would be a small gripe were combat a small part of the experience, but it's not. All this said though, there's solid unit and building detailing present here, but that's really only fully apparent when zoomed in, which you kind of never are. Meanwhile, the subtle score and sound design are fine, establishing decent corporation-specific atmospheres, but they never impressed me per se. As for value, Punk Wars is launching around $20 and presents a potentially tremendous dollar-to-hour ratio, but whether those hours are well spent is another question. In the end, and after averaging up our micrometrics, Punk Wars earns a decidedly neutral mega score of 2.92 out of 5. I doubt anything here will elicit much reaction from you, positive or negative, and it's hard to recommend with so many other 4Xs launching in recent years. Until next time, this is Scope, and thanks for watching.